I'm Dr. Seena Paul from Sri M.D. Shah Mahila College of Arts and Commerce. Today we are going to discuss on the topic titled Visibility of Women in the Corporate World, and the module number is 14. Now what are the objectives we want to achieve through discussing this module? First, we want the maker to understand how women are underrepresented in the corporate world. In the course of this chapter, we will be looking at the representation of women in the company boards, not only in India, all over the globe. We are going to look at the share of women in the company board of USA. We are going to look share of women in the company board of UK, and similarly, we are also going to look at the share of women in the company board of India. Also, we are going to look at the factors which are responsible for the poor representation of women in the company board across the globe. Gender diversity in the leadership of business around the world is an issue of grave concern. This stems from the fact the proportion of women on the corporate board and senior management is strikingly low all over the world. On reviewing the composition of board companies of the stock index of 20 countries spread through Europe, North America and Asia Pacific, it is clear that women are largely underrepresented at the board level despite some improvements in a few countries. Another fact which is noticed is there is a large variation in the proportion of women on the corporate board of one country to another. In Norway, the women representation is 35.5% of board members. The respective figure for other countries are Austria, it is 13%, Denmark, it is 21.9%, Finland, 22.9%, France, 29.7%, Germany, it is 18.5%, Sweden, it is 28.8%, Switzerland, it is 17%, United Kingdom, it is 22.8%, Japan, it is 3.1%, India, it is 9.5%, Hong Kong, it is 10.2%, Australia, it is 19.2%, USA, it is 19.2%, China, it is 8.5%, and Canada, it is 20.8%. Looking closer at the composition of the corporate board of few countries.
In February 2002, Norwegian politician Ansgar Gabrielsen devised a law that said all public companies must have 40% female representation in the boardroom.
That's the milestone I have put in Norwegian society. And to be honest, I'm a little bit proud of it.
His plan was bold and highly controversial.
If I have to make a choice between man or woman, I think that's wrong.
He had to really fight for his proposal and stand his ground.
Now there are signs that gender diversity in the boardroom is good for business.
Companies with the highest representation of women, on average, financially outperform those with the lowest representation.
Today's challenges are global. The solutions require great minds. In this series, we profile the people who are thinking big.
Gender diversity trend in the UK-based companies. Gender diversity in the company board has seen an encouraging trend in UK, which is well recorded by an increase in the share of women representation in the Financial Times Stock Exchange members company board. Women representation in the FTSE board members stood at 23.5% in 2015, and it is significant when compared to other European countries. In other words, out of the current total of 1,119 board members, 263 board members were women. In the last 4 years, the share of women in the FTSE board 100 board has more than doubled. The parallel figure for FTSE 250 is 18%, and further it has more than doubled from 2011 level, that is 7.8 in 2011. Another good indicator of gender diversity in British boardroom, there is a sharp drop in all male board equally in FTSE 100 and 200. In the case of FTSE 100, Currently, there are no all-male board and the corresponding figure of FTSE 250 is 23 all-male board, down from 131 all-male board in 2011. Further, there is an improvement in the appointment of women in the corporate board. In the last 4 years, 192 appointments of women has been done in FTSE 100 board and the corresponding figure for FTSE 200 is 286. However, there are some areas of concern. First, number of women executive directors has remained relatively low both at FTSE 100 and FTSE 250 level. In the case of FTSE 100, it is only 8.6% and the corresponding figure for FTSE 250 is 1.23%. Further, a large majority of FTSE 100 companies, that is precisely 59 companies, have women representation of less than 25% on the board. Of these, there are 25 companies whose representation is below 20 and 12 companies have only one woman on the board. For FTSE 250, there are still 185 companies which have not yet reached the 25 representation of women on their board.
Cultural bias in all human events is always a distorting factor, especially in hiring. The warped lens of bigotry and ignorance cuts both ways on the hiring and candidate side, even subliminally and without intent. Many women and minorities culturally feel they are unable to climb higher, that the odds within a predominantly white male society are impossibly against them. Those who don't feel included often tend to make themselves small and effectively disappear into the substructures of society, as the statistics on inclusion clearly show. To truly make an impact, to do what is right, not only in this industry, but as a society as a whole, we must give people a helping hand up. People need to be encouraged and included. People need to be able to see inside the doorway of opportunity so that they can acquire a sense of personal possibilities. We are, each of us and all of us collectively, organisms in the whole of humanity. We are interconnected emotionally, intellectually, and physically, whether we realize this or not. Every loss of possibility or hope diminishes us all. Every triumph lifts us together. Today, the internet is the most powerfully liberating force in history. People of every type from every part of the world connect and interact. The users and people affected by technology are diverse.
Now let's look at the gender diversity trend in the Australian company board. Like UK, women has reasonably good presence on the corporate board of Australian company. The percentage of women at Australian Securities Exchange 20, Australian Security Exchange 50, Australian Security Exchange 100 and Australian Security Exchange 200 member company varies in the range from 20 to 23%. Also in the period between January 2012 and January 2014, the percentage of women in the company board of different Australian exchanges index has witnessed a marginal improvement. Further, women comprise 26% of the new appointments in AX's 200 boards, but a disturbing factor is out of the total of 30 boards in AXX 200 still do not have any women as board members.
It's very important for Australian boards to encourage gender diversity, partly because we need all the best thinking around the board table to solve complex problems, but also because obviously there are now high expectations that more women are joining boards. We're seeing that around the world, we're seeing it in Australia, it's just the way we do business in the 21st century. So what can they do? Well, first of all, the women are there. It's really more a question about how to find out about them and how to give them access to board appointments. It's creating a pipeline. It's being clear when board positions are actually becoming vacant. It's looking at who's out there and who might be in a position to actually contribute to that particular board, that particular industry, and so on. And it's of course widening the networks that board members have, making sure they have visibility of all the talent that's available before they make decisions about board membership. So it's really thinking bigger, thinking wider, looking deliberately for diversity in the makeup of a board and then taking action accordingly.
Gender diversity trend in the US company. Unlike UK, the trend in USA is not favorable for gender diversity on the corporate board. Women represented only 19% of the board members of Standard & Poor 500 companies, which is approximately 3% above the level achieved in 2008. Similarly, the women board members comprised only 16% of the members at firms in Standard & Poor 1500 overall. However, when the large capital firms are dropped from the universe of Standard & Poor 1500 firm, the measure of gender diversity drops further. The percentage of women on board in the Standard & Poor Mid Cap and Small Cap Index descended roughly by 2 percentage points across all the 7 years during 2008 to 2014. The gender diversity level are comparable across firms in the Russell 3000 and the Standard & Poor 1500 Standard & Poor 500 over the period under review. It was observed almost 3% deficit on an average in female representation at firms in the Russell 3000, excluding companies in the Standard & Poor 1500 that may have a size bias to them. In other words, smaller firms tend to have a lower proportion of women on the boards, indicating lesser gender diversity. However, the recent trend indicates an improvement in gender diversity in US as large increases seen in the proportion of women on board in 2013 and 14, increases approximately 2 to 3 percentage points respectively across all the indices. On review of gender diversity across the 24 industries on the board of Standard & Poor 500 constituents during 2008 to 2014, it is observed that household and personal product industry has the highest proportion of women. Also, the board of companies in the household and personal products industry comprised of 33% female members on average, and in the corresponding period, it was also the industry with the highest rate of growth in the proportion of women in the board during 2008 to 2014.
Egon Zehnder cares deeply about leadership. We believe strongly that diverse and inclusive leaders create a better world, where organisations and economies not only grow, they thrive. We also believe we have a unique role to play in advancing this agenda around the world. This is why, for the third straight year, we hosted our Leaders and Daughters event series. We created this global programme to bring generations together, to learn from both accomplished leaders and their daughters as they embark upon their own career journeys. Our goal is to spark the conversation and to collectively pave a better future for the next generation of female leaders. The dialogue at the events uncovered several common themes. Self-esteem comes from within.
Your self-worth is determined and defined by you. Don't give away your power. That is something that you have to have and keep, and it has to come from inside of you.
I always tell my daughter, #crazygood, right? Be crazy good at whatever it is you do, because if you're a shining star and you're doing a great job and you're building a reputation for yourself and you have personal credibility and you have conviction and you're shining, people want to help you. The whole world conspires to help you succeed.
Push beyond your comfort zone.
What I always try to convey to my kids is, first of all, find out what you're passionate about. 2, be curious. And 3, leave the comfort zone. Try to push yourself, find out how far you can go.
The only way to find out, can I do this, was to keep on doing it. When your motivation is bigger than your fear.
Gender diversity trend in Indian companies. Compared to developed economies, women representation is still poor in the company board of the developing country. India, the situation is comparable to the developing countries. Women only represented 6% of the board of the listed companies in India. Further, a marked difference is observed in the percentage of women sectors. Further, a marked difference is observed in the percentage of women directors in different sectors. This may be due to the maturity of the industry and globalization, as well as the impact of outsourcing As we see, iron and steel and IT, consulting and software tops the list.
Diversity is a key for our success.
In our team, we have 26% gender diversity, and as a team, we believe that diversity is extremely important.
In my opinion, women bring a very different perspective and a very innovative approach towards work when they are in a workplace. Women contribute very, very effectively in terms of the dedication, a very different thought process.
When you have diverse thoughts and you kind of converge those thoughts towards the success of an organization, that's the point where you will really be having engaged teams.
The point of view of different people will of course be different. The ideas that come in might cover all angles, and it will of course help us in solving the customer's problems more easily.
They bring a lot of unique perspective to issues, matters, dealing with them, etc.
The key ingredient is about having a very different scale of thought leadership, which comes from both the male gender as well as the female gender. So I think diversity is a key here.
To retain the current employees, I would say that facilities like providing daycare at work and allowing others to take care of their children while working.
By giving more equality and respect to them. Second is by mentoring, giving them great mentors and who will guide them through the path inside into it. And third is by being flexible to their needs.
Focus on the areas where it will be more flexi in terms of working hours or in terms of their login, logouts, or the nature of jobs. Provide more support in terms of, it could be medical system in place.
Having childcare options add into it, mainly for working mothers and mothers to be. I think this will be a great way to influence having more women in the organization. A lot of good things to look forward to, like the flexible timing that we offer women.
The attention to detail everywhere, like pantries and the cab facility, everything.
And other facilities like work from home, the transport facility, all this make into a really great place for women to work.
Women in the senior management. From the above, it is very clear that the representation of women in board is on the rise as a trend is moving upwards in a few countries. This positive news is not replicated in the representation of women in the senior management. In all parts of the world, the lowest female representation is at the CEO level, and it grows as we move downwards at the corporate ladder, that there is better women representation in areas of lesser influence and with lower promotion opportunity. However, there are some exceptional countries where the share of women in senior manager is far superior than the global average. For example, Thailand has the highest female participation at 26.5%, followed by Malaysia, it is at 26.2%, and Sweden at 25.6%. Besides, all regions and in the majority of industry, women representation is greatest in shared service rather than CEO and operational role. These positions carry lesser influence and typically have lesser profit and loss responsibility. It is also seen female representation is higher in new economies and non-manual labor.
For much of known and written history, women have had subordinate roles.
One of the large forces in the last century for global growth has been the rise of women.
How do we create a vision that people will see the value of this need to change?
Globally, 96% of the health gap has been closed, 93% of the education gap, 60% of the economic participation gap, and only about 19% of the political gap. The World Economic Forum has helped drive the conversation, not just looking at the rights of one half of the population. This is an underuse of one half of the world's human capital.
As more and more companies and countries pay attention to talent, the issue of gender parity becomes more and more important.
Is it going to help the bottom line? Because it's very much related to competitiveness.
Companies that have more diversity in their organizations have a higher return. They're more profitable.
In 2006, we launched the Global Gender Gap Report to measure how our country's ranking in terms of closing the gender gap. It's brought on board governments and CEOs that weren't paying attention to this issue before.
The top management of the large corporations are very much aware of the need, but they don't know what to do.
And that resulted in the repository of successful practices.
A summarization of a lot of initiatives that have been done by companies and other institutions to actually eliminate that gap.
We launched 3 pilot country-level task forces with the public sector, the private sector, the most influential organizations at the national level.
We first want to try to document what each company is trying to do, what the best practices are, and then start disseminating that throughout the task force.
Businesses have to learn from each other and governments have to learn from each other.
Şimdi yeni hedefimiz rol modelleri çoğaltmak ve iyi örnekleri güçlendirmek.
Why is this gender imbalance in boards and senior management of the companies? Even global leaders in gender diversity like Norway and Sweden have also not achieved gender parity in the company boardroom and senior management.
Inside many companies, long-standing traditions or corporate cultures that keep women out of top management positions are hard to get around. Marina Banovic is breaking the barriers. As Chief Operating Officer of Societe Generale Bank in Montenegro, she leads the bank's human resources, IT, purchasing, and facilities management departments. The Montenegrin Employers Federation is working to raise the profile of women in business and management. It developed 3 brochures promoting equality and preventing discrimination at work. For Marina, the work of the MEF is making a difference.
It has definitively influenced many companies in Montenegro to start thinking about this issue and, when necessary, the manner in which the issue should be dealt with.
In Uganda, a skills training and networking project for women in business organized by the Federation of Uganda Employers is changing lives. Ruth Zaraba is general manager of a children's home. She uses the skills she learned at work every day.
I feel more confident now, even when making decisions or taking on discussions, because I have a base. I'm sure that if I take this approach, it will give results, which I didn't have before.
What are the barriers to achieve the gender diversity in the leadership of business? The term often referred to describe the invisible barrier that blocks women chances of further promotion or advancement up in the corporate ladder is known as glass ceiling. Few causes of the glass ceiling faced by women in the world of business are as follows. First, occupational segregation. One important barrier to women's leadership is occupational segregation. Largely, executive positions remain segregated by gender. Women executives are largely concentrated in specific areas such as personal, public relation, and even finance specifics. But the experience, which are often deemed crucial for the position of CEO and other senior management positions, are in the areas such as operation, manufacturing, or marketing, which are not generally offered to women managers. Hence, when women rise to position closer to the top later in the career, they often find excluded from the upper rank of management due to the improper tracking earlier in the career. The old boy network and peer similarity. Perhaps the most important significant barrier of women which shuts women out of the top management is the old boy network and peer similarity. The old boy network consists of males who have been educated at the same institution or who have climbed the corporate ladder together. Men who are part of this network often look at the fellow co-members who are generally former colleagues and friends to fill their position. As women are generally outside these networks, hence they are not generally even considered when it comes to promotion. The network not only hurts women when it comes to promotion, but women also who have reached an elite position believes that such a network excludes them from new business opportunities, and further fundraising is also tougher for women in business who are excluded from this old boys club. Another barrier which is faced by women in seeking promotion is peer similarity. It is observed there is more likelihood that men with similar interest in leisure activity as the male boss will be promoted over others. Next barrier to women leadership is behavioral double bend. A double bend is a behavioral norm that creates a situation where a person cannot win no matter what she does. Typical double bend for a woman in a leadership position is that they must act tough and authoritative if they have to be taken seriously. But if they act tough, they are perceived as bitches. Serious problem with double bend, they are not often articulated, but instead they present themselves to women in the form of challenges or obstacles to overcome. The challenges of double bend, like speaking assertively but not too assertively, dressing like a woman but not dressing too feminine, unnecessarily provokes needles of self-monitoring and self-consciousness, and it drains away energy from the real important task at hand if women take the double bend too seriously. Lack of mentors. Another barrier to women in leadership is a lack of senior or successful role models and mentors for women executives. Mentoring is an arrangement whereby a person in a leadership position provides guidance and assistance to an individual in a more junior position. As more men are in the leadership position, they are more in favor to mentor their co-members from the old boy network. This results in few mentoring opportunities for women in comparison to their male colleague. This is a serious barrier to women advancement. Women in executive positions often points out that the lack of mentoring among women has been detrimental in their climb up to the corporate ladder. Next, exclusion from informal social gathering. Another issue which confronts women executives is the exclusion from the informal social activities of male executives. These social activities act as a breeding ground for developing rapport with colleagues, potential clients, and male bosses. A significant consequence of women being excluded from these informal network of communication is that women remain the other or the outsider. Golf course, for instance, has turned out to be an important arena for male executive to discuss and to finalize the business contract. Thus, women's exclusion from golfing acts as a hindrance for furthering a business interest and an opportunity for climbing the corporate ladder. Gender and communication styles. In corporate life, managers are often required to negotiate, and promotion of managers the promotion of manager up the corporate ladder often depends on their skill to negotiate. Women's less aggressive and less assertive form of communication acts to her disadvantage in the negotiation process. Men are more likely to blow up their own horn compared to females, and hence give them an advantage over women in their act of negotiation. Such behavior is also appreciated by the men in power. Next, gender-based stereotype. Gender stereotyping is another barrier which is faced by women in a way to a corporate ladder. Men are believed to exhibit traits of being aggressive, independent, unemotional, objective, dominant, active, competitive, logical, worldly, self-confident, and skilled with business, and these traits are related with competence in business. In contrast, women are stereotyped as exhibiting traits which are feminine, and these traits are associated to incompetence in business. Another way of stereotyping women is that a tone and pitch of voice, physical appearance, and mode of dress are considered to be inconsistent with the male stereotype of leadership. Gender stereotyping severely hurt women prospects of advancement. To summarize today's lecture, gender diversity in the leadership of business around the world is an issue of grave concern. This stems from the fact that the proportion of women on the corporate board and the senior management are strikingly low all over the world. There is large variation in the share of women on the corporate board of the country as compared to developed economies. Women representation is poor in the company boards of the developing countries. For instance, women has a share of 35.5% in the corporate board of Norway. But in the case of India, it is less than 6%. But there are rays of hope as improvement is seen in the gender diversity in the corporate board of countries like UK, Australia, USA. A rising trend is visible in the share of women in the corporate board all over the countries. This positive news is not replicated in their representation in the senior management in all the parts of the world. The lowest female representation is at the CEO level, and it grows as we move downwards in the corporate ladder. The barriers to achieve gender diversity in the leadership of business is known as glass ceiling. Few causes for the glass ceiling faced by women in the world of business are occupational segregation, old boy network and peer similarity, behavioral double bind, lack of mentors, exclusion from informal social gathering, gender in communication style, gender by stereotype. Thank you.